What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be reacting for the very first time to Shiny Gold Tails. So I'm very excited to see how this video is, how this channel is. I'm very excited for that. So I'll be reacting to 3 true bed roommates horror stories by Shiny Gold Tales. So if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, hit on that notification bell, guys. I would really appreciate it. So without wasting any more of your time, let's jump right into this video. I'm excited.
I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18 years old. I had just graduated from high school, and I wanted to try something new. That's why I decided to move out of my hometown to a bigger city. I didn't have enough to afford my own place, so I was looking for a roommate. I would check Craigslist and Facebook every day when I was planning the move. There was a post on Facebook that looked good. It was for a room in a 2-bedroom house. My future roommate would be Kyle, who was the owner of the place, and he was in his late 20s. Included in the post were only 3 pictures. One of them was of the living room, which looked amazing. There was a large couch, and it looked really fancy. The rest of the room was nicely decorated. The other 2 photos were just of an empty bedroom that looked pretty basic. That was to be expected. It was up to me to make the place look like home. After a few messages back and forth, we decided to become roommates. It was a big leap for me, but I was excited to move out, and Kyle seemed decent enough in our online exchanges. Since I was in a different city, which was pretty far away, I didn't see the place in person before moving in. Before I moved in, Kyle sent me a list of house rules. It was just basic stuff for the most part. Clean up after yourself, and don't go into his room. Not much else. When I arrived, Kyle was there to welcome me. He was a tall, thin guy, and he had really bad posture. He was constantly hunched over and had a really strange smile on his face, which made me feel uneasy right from the start. As soon as I moved in, Kyle disappeared into his room, and I didn't see him again that day. It was a really lonely feeling being there. I was in an unfamiliar place, and other than one good friend, I didn't know anybody in the city. One thing that immediately struck me was that the picture from Facebook did not match up to anything in the actual house. Since I didn't have any other options, though, I let it go. I figured he had put it there to make the place look better. It wasn't that bad in real life, but I bet all the furniture came from a thrift store. Not that that bothered me or anything. As the days went by, Kyle stayed in his room most of the time. I knew that he worked from home, but the silence that emanated from his room seemed more and more like seclusion rather than productivity. Occasionally I'd hear hushed murmurs, as if he were talking to himself, but it was infrequent. I would see him occasionally in the kitchen, but that was really it. I started to wonder what he was doing in his room that whole time. He was there when I left for work, and he was there when I came back. Over the next few weeks, I saw less and less of...
So this guy basically, he just locks himself in his room the whole day. He doesn't go out. He doesn't have friends. It seems like he doesn't have friends, because if he's always in his room, when does he go out, hang out with friends, maybe even a girlfriend and stuff like that? He's a bit weird. But there are socially awkward people, so it's normal.
Kyle. Eventually, I realized I hadn't seen him for days. Not in the kitchen making food. I didn't even see or hear him going to the bathroom. It was very strange, and he wasn't even answering his phone. I didn't want to do it, but I decided I had to check on him. What if he needed help? I had to find out. I approached his door, feeling very nervous. There was no telling what I might find in that room. Standing in front of the door, I decided to knock first. My fist pounded on the door twice. Then I took a step back and waited. There was not a sound from the other side of the door, and I was listening carefully. Next, I tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. The interior doors just had those locks that were easy enough to open, with anything thin enough to poke in.
I do feel like he would lock his door, because he seems like a person who's always in his space. So I definitely felt like this door would have been locked. So why is it just quiet? I'm curious.
I found a wooden skewer in the kitchen and used that to unlock the door. I cautiously pushed it open. The room was dark and the curtains were drawn. The air was stale, as if it hadn't been disturbed in days. Kyle's bed was neatly made, his desk cluttered with papers, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he disappeared into thin air. I stood there in the doorway for a minute, then I closed the door and went back to my room. What was I supposed to do? My roommate disappeared without a trace. Was he a missing person, or just out for whatever reason? I decided not to call the police. The next night, when I was in bed, I heard the front door creak open. Heavy footsteps pounded through the hallway. I heard them approaching my room. The door swung open, and I saw Kyle rush towards me. Before I knew it, he was leaning over my bed, and he had a knife to my throat. "What the hell are you doing in my room?" he bellowed. I didn't answer. I couldn't squeeze out a word. The knife pressed harder against my skin. "Stay the hell out of my room," he barked. I finally managed to speak, and I said that I was sorry. I couldn't see his face because it was too dark, but I knew he was seriously pissed. "What did you see?" Kyle shouted. I didn't see anything. I just opened the door, then left. I tried to explain. As soon as I said that, he turned around and stomped out of my room, and then out the front door of the house. After he was gone, I laid there in bed, not daring to sleep. The next day, Kyle...
Bro, how would you even stay there now? How would you feel comfortable? How would you sleep after somebody just put a knife on your throat and threatened you? Whoa, I would be freaked out. I wouldn't even stay there. Whoo, bro. But I know that he doesn't know anybody in the place right now. He just moved there, so it's a bit difficult for him to go anywhere. But I would be scared, bro. Like, somebody switched up that quickly to me. Like, what is he hiding in his room that is so bad that he had to come and put a knife on your throat while you're sleeping? That is crazy. It has to be something big. Red flags are popping up. Just him being that secluded is a red flag on its own, because he seemed like someone who was cool as they're talking over Facebook and stuff, and then he lied about how the house looked. That's cool, because it didn't seem bad as he said. And now he put a knife on your throat, bro. I would find another place as soon as possible, because it would be very, very, very scary sleeping in a house knowing that someone threatened you on that level of that is a crazy level of threatening someone, putting a knife on their throat. Crazy.
was still gone. I walked around the house, and eventually, I found a small camera in the kitchen hidden behind the coffee maker. I poked around a bit more and found one in the hallway as well. I think that's how he knew I went into his room. There was probably a camera in there as well, probably connected to his phone. When I found that, I knew I needed to leave, as if it wasn't obvious enough already. I packed up what I could and called my parents. My mom was happy that I was coming home anyway. They picked me up late that evening, and we stayed in a motel that night. When I finally got back to my parents' house, I was relieved. I had to leave my job in the city, but it was worth it. Something about this experience made me feel like I was not ready to move out yet. I still wonder why.
So this guy was actually spying. He was spying all from day one, because he put a camera in the kitchen, probably in his room as well. He wasn't even staying there. Why was it? It's so weird that we're not gonna get full answers to this. I would have loved to know why he was doing such a thing. I would have loved to, but we're glad that nothing bad happened, and this person was able to get back with his parents and stuff like that. So that's great. It's still creepy though. It would have emotionally scarred me for life. I'm not gonna lie.
Al was so concerned about his room. The need for privacy is understandable, but the way he reacted made me think that he was up to something.
Yes.
Like there was something to hide in his room.
Yes.
He was seriously unhinged in the way he threatened me with that knife, though. We did end up filing a police report, but never heard anything back. It's been over 5 years now. I still don't know exactly what Kyle was up to. I didn't stay long enough to know for sure. It wasn't worth it to be around that guy any longer.
visibly clear up those pimples fast. Nivea Clear Up controls oiliness, visibly.
When I was about 18 years old, I made some bad decisions and was fighting with my mom a lot. I decided to move out of her house and moved in with this guy who I was seeing. He was kind of shady and had some kind of shady friends, but I was the age where I thought I knew everything and didn't.
Typical us, eh? Typical us. You fight with your parents, you're thinking this is the right time. I'm gonna move out because I can't take this anymore. I can't take living in this house with you, going off with me and stuff like that. And you're gonna move in with a shady guy. And he has shady friends. And that seems okay. That is crazy. That the things we put ourselves through is just some crazy shit. It's really crazy.
Listen to anyone. We had to move out of our place where we were staying. A guy my boyfriend had worked with offered to let us stay at his place. We moved in with the guy, and at the time, we didn't have a car, and I wasn't working. My boyfriend was looking for a job. Because the guy we were staying with worked nights, he was there all the time during the day. Therefore, I was all alone with him, since my boyfriend was out looking for work. It was just me and that guy. He was a drunk, but not an angry drunk or anything. Just one of those guys that would sit around and drink all the time, and didn't really do anything, so no big deal. He was a little creepy, and stared at me a lot, but I was young and stupid, and didn't think much of that either. The place we were living in was a 2-bedroom trailer, but the kind that didn't have real doors. Instead, it had these plastic curtain-type doors that didn't close all the way. The guy's bedroom was the only room with a real door. All the rest of them were those weird curtain-type things. That's important a little later. For the first couple of days, everything was cool. The guy shared his beer with us, and pretty much left us alone. The first day that my boyfriend went to look for work, I was alone with the guy. I was sitting in the living room, just hanging out playing solitaire with a deck of cards and listening to the radio. The guy came out of his bedroom and started staring at me again. I was a little creeped out, but figured whatever. He seemed harmless enough, so I pretty much ignored him. He sat there for about an hour, just drinking beer and staring at me, and then said that he was going to take a nap. The next thing I heard, he was making disturbing noises that I would rather not describe in detail. All kinds of grunting and groaning noises in the back room, and it was weird. He was...
Is it possible that this guy is doing what I'm thinking? Is it possible? And you're sitting over there, and you're hearing this. I would be disturbed. I'm not gonna lie. That would... What? And the fact that he came in and then he was staring at you in a weird way, in a creepy way, and then he goes and then you start hearing those sounds. To me, that would be a red flag. Bro, a lot of red flags here.
Letting us stay there rent-free though, so whatever. Eventually, my boyfriend got back, and the guy came back out. He was hanging out like nothing was going on. I was a little weirded out, but when I went for a walk with my boyfriend and told him about it, he didn't seem too worried. The next day, the same thing happened. My boyfriend left to look for a job, and I was in the house alone with that creeper roommate. I was sitting in the living room, playing cards and listening to the radio again, like before. And just like the day before, he came out and drank for a while, staring at me. Then he said something about taking a nap. This time I heard the same thing again, and he started saying my name really loudly. I was way weirded out at this point, but like before, my boyfriend came back, and he quieted down. We went for a walk. I told him about it again, and he said...
What? Let me go back, guys. Let me go back.
He came out and drank for a while, staring at me. Then he said something about taking a nap. This time I heard the same thing again, and he started saying my name really loudly.
My gosh.
I was way weirded out at this point. But like
gosh.
before, my boyfriend...
Obviously, oh, Jesus Christ, I would leave. At this point, it's not just weird, it's creepy, it's everything that is not good. So I would leave, I would go back home. But since she's stubborn, that's not gonna happen. but it's still weird, it's creepy, it's everything that is not good. It's a bad situation.
Came back, and he quieted down. We went for a walk. I told him about it again, and he said he thought it was weird, but still figured the guy was harmless. The next day, same routine happened. My boyfriend left to look for work. I was sitting in the living room playing cards on the couch, and the creeper came out and started drinking again. This time he started talking to me. It was a really awkward conversation about what had been going on each day. I was really uncomfortable, so I walked outside to wait for my boyfriend to get home. When he did, I told him about it again. This time, he suggested we go pick up my dog from my mom's house. The dog I had at the time was a little Pomeranian-looking thing, and he was very aggressive. At least it was something. That night, we walked to my mom's house and picked up the dog. The next day, my boyfriend was staying at his friend's house overnight to help him move, and left me there alone. Really bad decision.
Hell no.
Since I knew he wouldn't be there that night, I decided...
Hell no. Why would you stay alone with this? I hope he's not home. Either way, it's still, why would you stay? Why not just go with the boyfriend and stuff?
to chill in our bedroom with the dog instead of hanging out in the living room. I took a nap early in the day when the guy would be at work because I was pretty sure I wouldn't be sleeping that night. Since the curtain doors didn't close all the way, I locked my dog in his crate and laid down under the sheet to nap. Next thing I knew, I woke up and my dog was going absolutely insane. He was barking, growling, and snarling inside the cage. I kind of turned just enough to see the door to the room without making it obvious that I was awake. The guy was standing there in the doorway. I was completely freaking out at this point because there was no real way out of this room. If he wanted to, he could come in and do whatever he wanted to me. I didn't really have anything to defend myself with except a 10-pound dog. I acted like I was still asleep and kind of rolled over where he couldn't see me, but I could see the door. He opened the door wider so he could still watch me. I was freaking out at this point. I sat up and scooted into the corner where he'd actually have to come into the room to see me. I asked him, "Can I help you with something?" He made some kind of a weird noise and wandered off down the hallway. I got up, got my dog's leash, and decided I was getting out of that house. By the time I got into the living room to leave, he was sitting on the couch staring at me again. Then he started talking again.
"So, I don't think this is working out. You and your boyfriend should probably find somewhere else to live."
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I'll tell him when he gets back, and we'll figure something out. I'm just gonna take the dog for a walk now. I decided I was gonna walk a few miles to my boyfriend's buddy's house, because there was no way in hell I was staying in that creeper's house alone again. I left, and the guy just kind of stared after me, but I figured that wouldn't be the end of it, and I would likely see him again. I headed off down the road, and about a half-mile away from the house, I heard his moped behind me. I figured he was going on a beer run or something. I just moved off to the side, so I wouldn't be in his way when he went by, but he pulled up beside me and started screaming at me. He said that I led him on. Then he said that we had until the end of the night to get out of his house. I honestly thought he was going to attack me or something, but after about 10 minutes of yelling, he just hopped onto his moped and drove away. I booked it out of there. By this time, it was pretty late.
I don't understand. How did you lead him on? There's nowhere in the story whereby it shows that the girl led him on. It is crazy. This guy is he's in his mind. He's always drunk. So he's imagining things that are not there. All the signs I'm sure that he was seeing were never there in the first place, which is the reason why he's thinking she led him on. Why would she do that in the first place? Because she thought that he was a creep. He really is a creep. Because why would you do those things while that person is there? It's crazy. Crazy.
Around midnight. It was pitch black since it was kind of a rural area. There were no streetlights or anything most of the way to my boyfriend's friend's house. I didn't even think to grab my stuff when I left. I just went straight there, which was a good 6 to 8 miles away. Fast forward a couple of days, and we got a ride back to the guy's house to pick up our stuff while he was at work. He said he left it on the porch. When we got there to get it, all my underwear was missing, and some of my other clothes were cut up. It was the creepiest thing I'd ever seen, and we just threw away most of it. We found out later that apparently the guy was known around the place as Uncle Perv because he'd gotten in trouble a few years back for doing the same kind of thing to someone else. When I was in college, I lived with my two good friends in a shared apartment. We were very close and always had a great time. I would have liked to keep things the way they were after we graduated, but as things go, we all went our separate ways. I managed to find a job in the same city where we were living, but my two roommates both moved away. Because of that, I had to move out of our place since the rent would be too much. I also thought it would be easier to move, rather than find two new roommates. In the month or so leading up to the end of our lease, I was searching online for rooms to rent. There were a few decent-looking options right away. I couldn't afford a full apartment at that time, so I was looking for at least one roommate. Deep down, I was hoping that things would be similar to the way they were. Maybe I could find somebody that would become a good friend. As you might have already guessed, that didn't happen. There was one ad from Craigslist that seemed promising. It was a whole house to be shared with just one other guy, who was the owner. His name was Greg, and judging by his picture, he seemed to be in his early 30s. I was 23 at the time, so a bit of an age difference, but nothing too concerning. The house was about a 10-minute drive from my work, so it was the best option I had found so far. The rent was also on the cheaper side. Another advantage was that there was no commitment up front. The lease would be month to month right from the start. For those reasons, I called and set up a meeting. When I got there, the place looked much like the pictures. It was a basic house with 3 bedrooms and an unfinished basement. It was semi-detached and made of red brick. The neighborhood was a little rough. Most of the houses looked run down, but Greg's was one of the better looking. The second bedroom was Greg's office. It would be just the two of us staying there. I agreed to take it on the spot and paid my first and last month's rent right there. I had another 2 weeks at my old place, so I gradually moved over. After I moved in, the first few days were fine. Greg was all right. He showed me around and even helped me unpack. My room was small, and it was at the front of the house. There was a window that faced the neighbor, so it was not much of a view, just a brick wall. Greg had installed a heavy door with a solid lock, which I really appreciated. Since I didn't know him, it was good to have that extra kind of security. The first red flag came a few weeks into my stay. Like I said, Greg was all right, but when I met his friends, my opinion changed. He had some people over on a Friday night. I was out with some friends until late, but when I got back, there were 5 or 6 guys hanging out in the living room, smoking, drinking, and probably doing some other stuff, although I didn't see for sure. When I walked in the front door, I don't think they even saw me. They were that out of it. These guys were off their heads on something. It's a very uncomfortable thing to come home to. When I went to my room that night, I felt like something was off. I felt like somebody had been in there. I thought my laptop was on my bed, but I found it on my desk instead. When I turned it on to watch a movie before bed, I was surprised to see that it was already on. That was weird, because I always turn it off. My door was locked while I was out, though, so I thought it wasn't possible for someone to get in. When I went to sleep that night, I tried to push it from...
I mean, it's not really possible for someone to get in. He's the one who put the door there. So it means that he probably has a key, or he made an extra key for himself to be able to open your door. So it's not really impossible for someone to enter your room just because you locked it. It's this person's house. They can do whatever they want, and you would not even know about it. And you saying that you usually leave your laptop or where in the bed, I think. And now it was in the desk. Means this person actually touched your shit. He was in there. He opened your room and was touching your shit. There's absolutely no way for you to be imagining that I left this there and now it's there. And I was about to watch a movie, and when I clicked, it was already open, bro.
My mind. After that night, I was distant from Greg, and especially his friends. It was beginning to seem like things might not work out because of how suspicious I was. I wasn't sure what was going on, or if it was all in my head. I really felt that somebody was in my room that night when I was away. The next weekend, the same group of guys were over drinking. I I stayed in that night, and I barely came out of my room. I went to bed at around 11, but lay awake for a long time, listening to the muffled conversation in the living room. By 1 a.m., I was still awake lying quietly in my bed, and Greg's friends were still there. I could still hear them talking, but the conversation seemed to have lowered to a whisper. Maybe they were trying to be respectful, I thought. Then I heard someone get up and walk towards my door. They stopped right in front of it. I lay there still, not sure what was going to happen next. As always, I had locked my door from the inside. I could see the shadow of 2 feet under the bottom crack of my door, and suddenly, my doorknob shook. Whoever it was tried to open it. After a few heavy attempts at turning the knob, I heard something that still shakes me up to this day. I heard a key slide into the lock, then it turned, and the door opened. At that point, I jumped up from my bed shouting, "What the F?" over and over again. I ran over to the door.
Bro, like I said, this guy has a key to your door. There's no absolute way that you could have imagined someone being in your room. You know what your room is like. You left it like that. So when you come back, you notice things that this was moved, this was touched, this was done, what not. But this guy had a key to your room, and now he's opened your door to confirm that he was actually in your room. So now you're scared shitless. I'll be scared shitless. Like, what the fuck, bro? There is the proper response to this. What the actual fuck? What are you doing in my room? What are you doing? And you're basically outnumbered. You're outnumbered because he has friends with him, and you don't know what he's going to do. Crazy.
And slammed it closed. Then I relocked it and pressed my body up against it. Sitting on the floor shaking, I shouted out that I was calling the police. Greg answered, trying to explain it away with some grade A BS. He said they were worried about me and wanted to check if I was okay. I didn't buy that for a second. The guy had a spare key to my room that whole time. Who knows what he was doing in there when I was away. I had no choice but to stay there that night, but I didn't go back to bed. I stayed up all night sitting against the door. In the morning, I called one of my friends from school, who lived across town. He agreed to let me stay with him until I found my own place. I started packing up as soon as the sun came up, and I was out of there before noon. When I was on my way out the door, Greg tried one last time to talk me out of calling the cops. I was still kind of scared, so I told him that I wouldn't. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. Later that day, I did call the cops. My understanding is that they interviewed Greg, but there wasn't much they could do since it was my word against his. He got away with it, unfortunately. One thing that confused me about this is that I didn't know what they wanted in my room. I was a broke recent graduate, and I didn't have anything valuable. Greg would have known that, since he helped me unpack and move in. It wasn't until days later that I found out what was really going on. I was browsing my computer when something popped up in my browser. I noticed in my browsing history a credit card application that I didn't remember filling out. I was sure that it was Greg or one of his friends. How he got the password for my computer, I may never know. My guess is that Greg peeked at it when I was filling it in one time. I've also considered that there were hidden cameras in my room. I wouldn't put anything past that guy. He was another level of deviant, keeping a key to my room. Upon further investigation, there were 2 other credit card applications. I was able to cancel all of them, and I reported it all to the police. Again, it was my word against theirs, so they never got the justice they deserved.
Bro, that was wild. That was wild. Someone actually doing that, like, they wanted to create credit cards on his name, and they'd be able to use it, and this guy was gonna be on debt. It was crazy, bro. Was crazy. It's crazy. I'm not saying that it's crazy, but it's hard to walk out of your house and leaving someone and they go through your stuff. It's hard to trust someone you've never known, you've only known for a few weeks or a few months. And it's difficult to have roommates, people that have not been in your life for a long time. But it happens. People need to move out, people need their space, and unfortunately you have to trust a stranger. So I really enjoyed this video, guys. So for those of you who are new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, click on that notification bell, guys. See you.